Woohoo! And we're live once again on another Tuesday. I have a guest today who's extremely special because I have been admiring him for years. It's kind of like LinkedIn royalty for me. So I have Mark Williams in the house today, and we are going to be talking about some great stuff. So I'll flip up the banner in a second. But before I do that, Mark, can you please introduce yourself, tell people who you are and what you do, and then we'll get stuck in.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on the show. First of all, it's so amazing to be here. I haven't done that many lives really in my time on LinkedIn, and I kind of consider this to be the ultimate in live stream experience on LinkedIn. So it's amazing to be here. So I'm Mark Williams. I am a LinkedIn trainer and coach. Have been since, believe it or not, 2008, which is a long time ago. You can imagine. My job's changed quite a bit over the years of doing that. But yeah, my first workshop ever was in 2008. And I'm also the host and producer of the Informed podcast, as it's now called. And that's me.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So our topic today it's a long one, proactive versus inbound business development strategies, finding the balance. And I love the finding the balance part because that's the key. You got to figure out, got to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You can't just all do all of it. And I think this is an important topic. And I'm actually going to shout out your podcast, Mark, because you had John Asperian on a few 2 weeks ago, and you were talking about he was the interesting person of the week, and it was a fabulous show. And I do recommend everybody go back and listen to that episode because you'll learn so much about John. And Mark, you have a fabulous way of interviewing people and pulling things out of them that can be quite personal in nature so that we actually see that human side. And during your discussion, this topic came up and you started talking about it. And I was quite fascinated with the whole topic. And I thought, I love this. Let's kind of dig into this some more. So thank you for inspiring me. And please, everybody go back and listen to that podcast episode. So Mark, before we kind of go too far, can we kind of define these terms for people? Because I think there could be people watching our show, listening on the podcast later that are saying, I'm not really sure what this even means. So when we talk about finding the balance later, we need to make it make sense first. So can you help me with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, these things are always a bit down to interpretation. So my interpretation of it is as follows. So proactive is when you're going out and seeking new customers and doing it in a way that is very much sort of the best analogy is like knocking on their door. You're approaching them. You're asking for the opportunity to be able to explain what you do or what you sell and try and get them to want to buy your product or service. So it's kind of like, I'm going to you. You're the customer. I'm coming to you and knocking on your door. Whereas inbound is the kind of opposite of that. What you're doing is the majority of your activity is geared towards creating a demand for your services or products. So you are doing all kinds of activities, which we can get into the weeds on that, in order to create this situation that's a bit more magnetic. So people are coming to you and want to do business with you. Now, one might argue that, both of those work at different times. And it may be that if you were starting out tomorrow, you'd be all proactive and no inbound. That's quite often how people first start. And then maybe in 10 years' time, you might be all inbound and no proactive, depending on your kind of growth strategy. I'm not saying that's right, by the way, but that's often how it pans out for a lot of people.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I know that there, even based on our personalities, some of us are we lean more one way. And I'll be totally honest, I lean more to inbound. I do that through content marketing, shows like this, podcasts. That's just naturally a better fit for me. But I know some people, they love to, social selling, getting out there, doing relationships. So I think even our core personalities can come into this as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it play to your strengths type of thing. But I think, there's also an element with business development that we need to consider the potential customer in all of this as well. So you might be really good at outbound proactive stuff, but it might not necessarily suit a certain type of customer. And equally the other way around as well. Some people may never respond to seeing lots of you and lots of content and lots of activity, never notice it or never be influenced by it, and really need someone to kind of proactively approach them. So yeah, there's your strengths and play into those, and there's also an understanding of the profile of potential customers in that as well.
And I would also say you kind of just reminded me that the first step really is about your customer and knowing who your target market is, who's your ideal customer, who's your audience. Because I think if you don't have that clarity at the very beginning, it doesn't matter which one you choose, you're in trouble. And so I think that's part of it too. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, absolutely. It's a sort of, we almost take that as obvious, but actually it's not. I mean, a lot of the time, one of the questions I ask, I always do like a pre-course kind of questionnaire that everybody has to fill out on my sessions. And one of the questions is, give me 3 topics that would be particularly interesting to your target customers. And the answers are quite revealing. So often the answer is what they do, and I'm like, really? Are you saying that, that if they were to list their 3 most interesting topics, that one would be your products and services? I mean, maybe. Lucky if that is the case, but I suspect it's probably not. So people don't always think that way. Put yourself in the shoes of the potential customer, understand who they are, understand how they think, understand what their challenges are, understand what excites them, get into that kind of mentality. And then you're better served to be, and that's whether you're being proactive or inbound. Either way, that understanding is critical in the first place, for sure. I always think, when I think about business development, I sort of categorize it into, there's sort of 4 elements to it, I think, or 4 stages to it. The first one is really all about visibility. Visibility meaning that you're not the best kept secret in your marketplace. People are aware of you and aware of what you do. And that's the first stage. But then added to that, you need credibility. So you need to be seen to be someone that is either producing a really good quality product or delivering a really high quality service, and that people can recognize that not only what you do, but that you know how to do what you do. And then the third stage is likability, if you like, just to make it another ability. Likability meaning that the potential customer needs to have that sense, that feel that this is someone that I could do business with. This is that product or service. I don't think that matters enormously. You could argue if it's your personal service that you're providing, then it's a little bit more critical. But I still think even if you're selling a product, the person to buy from you needs to feel that level of likability, that they feel they can feel warm towards you and want to find out more about you and want to develop a relationship with you. And the fourth stage is trust. So yeah, it's all very well feeling like I want to get to know you, but I'm not ready to buy yet. We haven't quite got that far yet. But as I start to understand more about you and we build that relationship, then now I feel I can really trust you. So I'm now prepared to step out and sign an order or commit to something. And it's quite simple when you think about it that way, isn't it? Got to be visible. That's got to be allied to credibility. Need to build likability amongst a specific customer base. This isn't likable to everyone, right? We're not trying to please everyone. And got to build that trust as well. And that's all about the relationship. And I think that you can achieve all 4 of those through your approach. The inbound activities, the things that generate people to come towards you, you can do. But I think the 4th of those, trust, is a lot harder to do solely on that basis. And I think you need to kind of be able to be a little bit proactive in getting yourself in front of people. So there comes a time when someone's not going to turn around to you and say, look, let's have a meeting. You might need to ask for that meeting. You might need to push a little bit more for that. But I do think the first three can be achieved to a very high level, visibility, credibility, and likability through inbound activities, the kind of stuff that you do really well. So that's sort of how I've always seen how business development is and how it kind of works. And I think the biggest mistake people tend to make is they often start with 4, you know, the trust thing. So they're going straight for the trust without, it's like, so if I knock on your door, you know, equivalent to doing so, and you don't know me at all, some random stranger just appears at your front door, then, you know, you might not even answer the door. These days, you probably wouldn't with a Ring doorbell and all the rest of it. You probably just speak to them through that and say, look, I'm not interested. Nobody particularly enjoys that experience of just somebody kind of pushing themselves right in front of you. I don't know who you are or anything about you. That's uncomfortable for them, right? So making it easier for them in the proactive approach, right, is to be visible and credible and likable. And you've already developed that through a lot of these activities that you are doing on LinkedIn and perhaps other places as well. That puts you in a position where if you want to do the proactive stuff, and let's face it, you know, quite often we do need to, you know, we've got bills to pay, we've got targets to hit, you know, we've got to make things happen to a degree. You can't always just say, oh, look, I'm just going to work really hard at generating interest in me and it's all going to happen. So sometimes the reality of life is that we are going to have to knock on doors. And, you know, I'm sure you've done, even though it's not what you enjoy as much, you just have to do it sometimes. But if you do it in isolation without the visibility and the credibility and the likability, then it's really hard and you're going to get a lot of rejection, which is hard on you, but also not particularly good in terms of the effect it has on the credibility, because every time someone's rejecting you, it's going to be very hard to win their business again in the future, because once people have decided, then it's pretty hard to turn that around. And not impossible for sure, but hard to turn that around at some stage later on. So that's it. That's how I see it and how it all fits.
I love that. And you know, I have to say that, like, sometimes with that trust, that's where sort of the, okay, let's have a Zoom chat, you know, a client meeting where let's just get together and we'll talk about your problems and am I the right fit to help you? If you don't have the other 3 elements done first, it's too soon and they don't trust you. And usually whenever I've actually met with clients before signing them up, when I meet them, I don't have to sell anything. It's just that final, are we a good fit? And it's usually yes, because it's already, you know, now they're just meeting me and they always say the same thing. You're exactly like you are on your videos. You're exactly like you are on your lives. They just wanted to know that was the final tick. And then they relax. Whereas I'm not unsure why people push and say, let's hop on a Zoom call. And it's like, I don't even know you. I don't know anything about you. Why am I going to do that at the beginning? Let's do that at the end.
Yeah, I think there's 2 reasons why that happens. I think one, and you know, sometimes when I'm working with people, you have to just take a step back and go, okay, what's going on here? I can see it's wrong, but why are they doing it that way? What's the motivation behind that? What's driving them to do that? And sometimes it is just this basic, it's not desperation, but it's like, I need customers. You know, I know that's a primary focus. That's why I'm on LinkedIn. I need customers, right? So the obvious thing is I'll go and get them. But you have to take a step back and go, well, hold on a second. No, the other side to that is, and you mentioned it earlier, is people that really enjoy it. You know, they enjoy knocking on doors and they don't mind rejection. You know, they almost kind of get motivated by rejection to a degree. And those people, I think, have to also be careful, because it might, it's what I was saying before, really, it suits their strengths and it's what they enjoy, but it's not considering the customer in that. So there's different motivations as to why people plow into that. The most common one for me, though, is it's just natural to feel that you are doing something to make things happen. You know, I need to do so. I need to feel at the end of the day that I've done enough and I've worked really hard at generating customers. The fact that I haven't got any, okay, but you know, if I keep working hard at this, and it's that thing of, you know, working smart and working hard, you know, it's like, if I keep going and I keep going and I keep knocking on doors, then eventually someone will say yes, right? Which then leads people down the route of things like automation and all that kind of numbers game stuff that a lot of internet marketers like to talk about. And, you know, when we're talking about LinkedIn, that's never going to really work. It's not in a sustainable way. So, yeah.
So
I've got an analogy on
sure,
this
go
as
ahead,
well.
go ahead.
Very timely one. I don't know whether you've been watching the Olympics, but I love the Olympics, and I find myself watching all kinds of weird sports that I would never consider watching at any other time. But I love it, and I love the fact that I can watch someone doing some random sport that I've never heard of before or never seen before, and when they win the gold medal, it's like they've worked years for that, and this is their dream, you know. And when they stand on the rostrum and they see the national anthem and stuff and they get emotional, I love that, because I just think, wow, how much effort and how many sacrifices they made, but they've had that dream and that goal to do that. Now, this is where the analogy works with business development, because I believe, and this is where the balance is tricky, which is why I want to talk about the Olympics in this regard, because I think if you take most of the people in the Olympics that have won a gold medal, I would bet the majority of them have visualized winning that gold medal. I would be surprised if they haven't. It's a very common technique in most sports. Okay. So they would have actually closed their eyes and actually imagined themselves on that medal rostrum and someone putting the medal over their neck. You know, that's what they would have gone through, a lot of them. And I think that's how we should approach business development, in the sense that we should visualize being the absolute best in our market. We should visualize a scenario that means that we don't have to approach anyone, that actually we have to turn people away because we can't satisfy the level of demand that there is out there, and that we get to be picky and choosy about who we deal with and who we work with. Now, whether we ever reach that or not, put that aside for a second. If you approach it with that mindset, as I'm doing the job that I'm doing, I am the best at what I do. That's how I see it, right? And I am always going to make sure I strive to be better and better. That's part of that visualization, because by visualizing it, I automatically do all those things to make sure that I'm really good at what I do. And as I approach people, I'm approaching them with the mindset in my head, well, of course, they're going to be delighted to hear from me, because like I'm the best, right? Right. If you can take that mindset and sort of almost train yourself to think that way, it's really effective. But here's where the balance is difficult, because approaching people, and this is sort of stuff I touched on with John in our conversation, when you approach people, you kind of hand the control over to them. And it has a negative impact on your visualization of being the best. Because in reality, what of course happens is I go, hi, Gillian, I'm really good at what I do. I want your business. And you go, oh, do you? Well, we'll see about that. Let me have a think. So you now feel like you're in control. You're making the decision, and you're deciding, because I approached you, whether you want to do business with me, right? And that's the tricky bit, because I totally accept that we have to do proactive at certain times, but finding the balance is about knowing the negative impact it can have on your visualization of being successful and winning lots of business and having people queuing up wanting to do business with you, because that's the visualization that you need to be successful. See where I'm coming from? And that to me, that's the ultimate kind of goal is I understand proactivity is going to be part of this, but I mustn't let that proactivity affect my belief that I'm going to win a gold medal. Because I think visualization, by the nature of it, will make you do all the things that you need to do in order to be successful. And a lot of that is about self-improvement, getting really good at what you do, if you're providing a service. And therefore, by doing that, by action and all those things to make sure that you've got this amazing thing to offer, then people are going to want to do business with you far more than if you knock on their door.
Mm.
And that's the tricky bit, I think, that finding that balance is that's the art of it. But if I had a choice, I would be saying to someone, every time you are being proactive in a business development sense, take a step back and just think before you do it, and think after you've done it as well about that goal, about that dream, and visualize it, and make sure it does not have a detrimental effect on your self-belief of being the number one in the market in which you operate.
That's a paradigm shift. That's a paradigm shift. But in essence, I think when you approach something like, is this a good fit for both of us? As opposed to pick me, there are some people I don't want to work with because I know I'm not the right person to work with them. Personalities, fit, whatever. I
Yeah.
just know that. And I think maintaining that belief that it's like you're looking for the people that are looking for you. So it's like, are you the right fit for each other? That makes it less of a, oh, please choose me because my children are starving and I need to pay the rent. It's a different mindset. But I do agree with you. Mindset is so important.
Well,
you
see, that mindset you've just described is a gold medal winning mindset, because you are saying, even if you desperately need the business, you're saying, I'm prepared to let that one go. I mean, I really could have done with it this month and it would have been really helpful, but it isn't aligned to me standing on the medal podium and someone putting a gold medal around my neck. It's just not. That isn't getting me to where I need to be. It's taking that scenario. If you took that customer, and I've done it, right? So I've been in that situation for sure. And what of course happens, because you're not aligned and you knew you weren't, then it becomes really hard work. It becomes demoralizing. And as a result of that, you start to believe less in yourself, because funnily enough, the job that you do for them, they're not that satisfied with, because you weren't aligned. So it wasn't going to work in the first place. You're kind of trying to make it work, but it's not really working. And the net effect of that is you start believing less in being a winner. So all of these things are interconnected. It's dead easy to say. I know it's dead easy to say, well, turn that customer away. They're not aligned to you, and da da da. It's easy to say and not so easy to do when you really need the business. But if I could have a word with my younger self, that's the one piece of advice I would give: be strong, hold out, turn people away, because if you visualize it, there's a queue of people round the corner wanting to do business with you. And although you may not see that, if you visualize it and imagine it, right, then when that person says, I want to do business with you, and you go, that's not right, then you go, well, that's fine to turn them away, because there's loads more just around the corner.
Yes.
And
that is the way to think. And you have to recognize, I fired clients. I have actually fired clients and said, I should not have worked with you in the first place. I knew it, but I took the work, and I don't do that now. But I did it. I'm older now, but when I was younger, I was doing that. And the thing is that ultimately you end up wasting time with the wrong people, because it will be twice as much work. And like you said, they're never happy. And if you say no, maybe you got to work a little bit harder to get more people into the funnel, so to speak. But at the end of the day, working with the right people is the better way to be, whether it's proactive or inbound. That is the better thing. And like you said, that's going for the gold and not the bronze.
Yeah. Absolutely. Winning mentality, belief in what you're doing. And even if, because I go back to the Olympics, there are people that won a gold medal at the Olympics that probably not that long ago, a few years ago, weren't even the best in their country. And all around them were signs that told them that they weren't going to win a gold medal, that this dream they have is ridiculous, right? They're not achieving this and they're failing at that, and that's not happening, and da-da-da-da. But if they just keep remaining with that belief, I can and I will do this, then it will happen, right? it's easy to be knocked off course, but it's that sort of almost stubbornness of this is what's going to happen. And I think back to my career, and although I made lots of mistakes along the way for sure, and worked with some of the wrong clients and all the rest of it, that's one thing I did quite well, is I always believe, I mean, I was a bit lucky because I was one of the first people to ever do it, right? So it wasn't really a lot of competition. So it was quite easy for me in a way to go, well, I'm going to be the best, right? Because, and these days that would be much harder in what I do, right? Because there's a lot of good people out there. And so you would have that. But we can all have our confidence knocked. I've had situations where I've had this belief that I'm the absolute best out there. And then someone will come along and do something really good. And I'll think, well, maybe I'm not. And you think it for a moment, then you just got to go, no, hold on a second, keep that belief. And I'm not talking about arrogance here. There's a way of delivering that. It's more an internal conversation than it is an external. I would never go on my podcast, or I've said it on here, I suppose, but I'd never go out there and say, hey, I'm the best, right? That's just not my style. Everyone that knows me knows I'm not like that at all. But internally, that is an inner belief. And I think, look back on my career, I think that's one thing I did really well, is I had that belief and I maintained that belief. And irrespective of what else is going on, and sometimes things going wrong, I wasn't going to be stirred from that. I wasn't going to be knocked off course. And I think proactive business development can do that to you, not just because of the effect it has on you, i.e., even though I might convince myself that it's the right thing to do, just the fact that I'm being subservient by approaching people rather than them approaching me is going to have a detrimental effect on my mentality. There is that danger. But add to that the mentality here is that because I'm approaching you, you feel more in control, and you feel that I'm subservient to you, right? And that makes it harder as well. So that's the danger of that sort of proactive approach. And of course, we see it all the time, don't you? This, almost every week, I think I see an example of someone completely messing it up by being too proactive. So I'm not saying it's wrong. If I had to pick between one or the other, I would pick, generating all the stuff that we've talked about in terms of inbound. But it isn't as simple as there's a right and a wrong. Proactive has its place, but the end goal that you should be aiming for, the visualization, is you don't need to do any proactive business development at all. I haven't done anything of that nature for, I don't know how long, maybe 6-7 years, something like that. Nothing at all of that nature. And most of the people that we see and know and respect out there in the LinkedIn community are the same. You just don't need to do it because you've built yourself to a position where you've got enough.
I see that. Yeah. So totally neglected my comments today, but I've been fascinated. So let me whip through a couple. So Jeff is here. We have lovely people joining us today. So Jeff Young says, here in the front row, ready to learn from two Uplift Live superstars, Gillian and Mark. Namaste. Thank you, Jeff. And I think everybody has learned a lot. I've learned so much. I've been mesmerized. Debbie Weems, me too. Jeff Young. Wonderful, Debbie. Thank you for joining us. Mark Lee says, could be the first LinkedIn Live I have attended live and early due to wanting to be here. The artist formerly known as Mr. LinkedIn. And we won't even go through that story because that's a story and a half. And Gillian Whitney, who so impressed me at Uplift Live. My podcast co-host runs it as a LinkedIn Live, but I never get to see the comments until afterwards. So let me just say well done and thanks to Gillian and Mark Williams. That's a wonderful comment. Thank you very much, Mark. And Mark Lee here, not here. I don't know what that means. Marianne Avery is here with us. So important to put yourself in your customer's shoes. Yes, that is, again, a great nugget, Mark, that it's not about you. And we always think, it's about me. How do I want to do it? And it's like, think about your customer. How do they want to hear it? And, think about, you got to weigh the balance of everything. And that's so important to know that customer. My goodness. David says, great point. feels do matter. Yes. And also great points, Mark. So you got a lot of fans in the house today here. Sarah Burgess, it's so funny when people say you're just like you on video. But, see, that's kind of why I do this, because Mark, LinkedIn Live does build trust, because you couldn't come today with a script. I didn't have a bunch of questions and prompts, and, you don't have a teleprompter in front of you. This is all just your years of experience, sharing your knowledge with people. And that does build trust with people, because if you didn't know if you don't know your stuff, Mark, you couldn't have just been talking like you have. So important, so important. And Jeff Young says, Mark, my compliments. You always explain things so simply, so they are easy to understand. Don't be stealing my easy peasy line, because that's mine. And David said, project your services as problem solver. How can we solve this? So that's good. That's good. And then Sarah says, good idea of visualizing in business development scenarios. That's so good. And I love the Olympics metaphor. And, and it's funny, I come from a family of dog show people. I don't dog show people, but my sister does, and her daughter does. And it's kind of like, I was thinking, win, place, or show, like we all want to win, like what level do you want to come in at? So do you just want to like take part in the Olympics, or do you actually want to go home with the gold? Because a lot of people went to the Olympics and didn't come home with anything. They just went years and years of training. And imagine all you can say is, I went to Paris. That's it. Right. So
yeah, there's another one in 4 years. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yep,
and a lot of people that won this time didn't win last time. And or got a silver. I think Mark makes a comment about that, and I agree with that. Yeah, aiming for gold doesn't necessarily mean always going to win gold, of course. But the mindset of someone that gets a bronze is they're rarely aiming for the bronze; they're aiming for the gold. They might end up with a bronze, but it's still a massive achievement,
Exactly. Sort of like shooting for the stars, however far you get is great, but still shoot for the stars. So Mark, we have come to the end of our 30 minutes. It always just goes zipping past. So can I just ask you, is there any sort of last words of wisdom? We haven't even really talked about LinkedIn. I could have you come back and do part 2, because it's like, we haven't even talked about inbound and proactive strategies with LinkedIn. And there is so many. But anyways, Mark, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
I would just reinforce the points about having a sort of gold medal mindset, that and don't let proactive business development affect you negatively in that regard. And it can, that is a danger of that system of operating in that way. And even though you might enjoy it, it can still have that negative impact on your belief, just because you're not acting like a gold medal winner by doing that. So yeah, that's that. I know it's not a new point, but I just reinforce that, because I'm not sure people always really think that way.
I love that. Well, thank you very much, Mark. It's an honor to have you on the show. I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I encourage everybody to become a subscriber, because then you just, boom, it just drops in my phone and it's like, oh, wow, what are you talking about this week? And I just love it, because you've always have a perspective that's a little bit different. And I love that you're always willing to be candid and just say what's on your mind. So good stuff.
Thank you.
Anyways, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Anybody who's listening on the podcast later, thank you for listening in on the podcast today as well. And we'll be back here next week with another Live on LinkedIn with Gillian and friends. Okay. Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.